Should Republicans get what they want in terms of policy instead of what Democrats want? From one perspective, of course not. Republicans are in the minority for a reason. The American people voted a lot more Democrats into office in Washington than they did Republicans, presumably because they wanted Democrats to get their policies passed for a change, since the Republicans had their shot with their majorities under George W. Bush. Now, from another perspective, kumbaya. Sure, Democrats are the majority, but why not let Republicans make policy too, or at least help make policy? It's the kumbaya philosophy that's held sway in Washington for the past year. For example, in October, John Boehner issued the minority party's demands for what they wanted out of health reform.
Number one, let families and businesses buy health insurance across state lines.
Check. As Ezra Klein of the Washington Post points out, the Senate version of the health reform bill actually allows for that. There's a whole section relating to the offering of plans in more than one state. Individual states can band together and allow insurers in one of those states to offer plans in all of those states. Buying across state lines is in the bill.
Number two, allow individuals, small businesses, and trade associations to pool together and acquire health insurance at lower prices, the same way large corporations and unions do today.
Check. That's exactly what the proposed health insurance exchanges are all about. The more people are allowed to participate in these exchanges, the greater the risk pool becomes and the lower the costs get. So they're 2 for 2. The second Republican demand already in the bill.
Number three, give states the tools to create their own innovative reforms that lower health care costs.
I know I'm beginning to sound like a broken record here, but check. Also in the bill. Section 1332 of the Senate bill is called the Waiver for State Innovation. Again, as Ezra points out, it allows states to opt out of the whole shebang if they can prove they have a better and cheaper way to do it. So the first, second, and third of the 4 Republican demands on health care are all in the bill. How about their last one, number 4?
And number 4, end junk lawsuits that contribute to higher health care costs.
Otherwise known as tort reform, otherwise known as in the bill. Yes, the Senate bill calls on individual states to develop new ways to deal with malpractice lawsuits, alternatives that could potentially be funded by Congress. The Senate health reform bill addresses everything that the Republicans have identified as their main concerns for policy on health reform. And the Republican reaction is to say, the bill must be scrapped. Let me not put words in their mouths. Let's let them do it.
It really is time to scrap the bill and start over.
And frankly, that response is totally rational. Republicans think that it is great politics to derail this thing, even though it's got all of their chosen policies in it. What's irrational is to look at that, to look at them having all of their policies in the bill and still saying no to the bill. What's irrational is to look at that and say, oh, hey, maybe Republicans just aren't getting enough of what they want. Let's give them some more.
There are some core goals that have to be met. So I'm going to be starting from scratch in the sense that I will be open to any ideas that help promote these goals.
President Obama originally wanted health reform done by August. That did not happen because Max Baucus decided to waste 3 months chasing bipartisanship in the Senate Finance Committee. Now, Mr. Obama plans to hold a bipartisan health summit in 2 weeks, which you just heard Senator Wyden talking about. It will presumably be similar to the bipartisan health summit that Mr. Obama held at the White House last March. When President Obama addressed House Republicans last month, he rattled off a whole list of ideas taken from Republicans and put into the health reform bill. All of that bipartisan reaching, all of that eternal optimism has resulted in exactly 1 Republican vote for health reform in the entire Congress. Congressman Joseph Gow of Louisiana is the only Republican in Washington who voted for health reform. And he now says he won't do so again. It doesn't matter what's in the bill. It doesn't matter which of their ideas you incorporate. Republicans are not going to support this. Period. Joining us now is Ezra Klein, staff writer at The Washington Post, who did not know about, and nor does he endorse, the snarky thing that I said about his paper a moment before he came on this show. Ezra, thank you very much for being here.
Good evening. I don't even think I heard it.
Hooray! That's the best defense. All right, don't watch the TiVo. What are there substantive policy disagreements here? Because it does not seem to me like the disagreements here are about policy. It seems to me like they are pure politics.
I mean, you could argue that there are, right? I mean, maybe Republicans don't believe you should spend money to insure human beings. I think that you can actually make that argument, right, that it's not worth doing. But I think that two things that you didn't include in your intro is that the larger arguments that Republicans have were also incorporated into the bill. What liberals want is a single-payer system, a public system. Actually, they let go of that. They don't even have a public option now. It's fully private. What John McCain and George W. Bush proposed, which were, again, bigger changes, was to begin unwinding the employer-based subsidy, or the subsidy for employer-based insurance. The Democrats actually agreed, and above House member objections, the president and the White House are pushing for the excise tax, which would begin to do that. So I don't think you can really say the argument is substantive here. I think that Republicans don't believe Democrats should do a health care bill because the argument here is who should win the next election. And Republicans would like it to be them, and that's hard to compromise on.
So in terms of the substance, in terms of engagement and really getting what Republicans are bringing to the table, it sort of began and ended when Jim DeMint said they want health care to be Obama's Waterloo.
Right. And, you know, one way you see this is Howard Baker and Bob Dole, two former Senate Republican leaders, came out with a joint proposal with Tom Daschle. And it looked exactly just about like the Senate bill, which is to say, and I think it even had some type of public option, so it was virtually a little bit more liberal. Their leadership, who's now sort of outside of the scrum of elections, came out with something and said, here's what a compromise bill would look like. And, well, frankly, it looked like what we're looking at. And that was true in 1994, too. The bill we're looking at looks a lot like what the so-called mainstream caucus, which is made up of Republicans and a couple centrist Democrats, came up with as the moderate alternative to the Clinton plan. What we're looking at is substantively a compromise bill. But, again, the fact of the matter is, giving the president and the Democrats a large accomplishment is not a political compromise. And a political compromise is the compromise nobody knows how to reach right now.
You heard Senator Wyden, or you might not have heard, Senator Wyden just a moment ago on our air, and the president today, both still pushing this idea of cooperation, saying we think there are areas where we have, where we can agree, we think there are things on which we can see eye to eye, citing specific Republican policies and the idea of Republican policies that they might be willing to endorse. I believe that Ron Wyden and Barack Obama are not only smart about policy, but smart about politics. Are you aware of some sort of secret rope-a-dope strategy going on here that would make sense of the continual efforts to try to get Republican votes in what seems to me like a futile effort?
I have never known a man who believes in bipartisanship as much as Senator Ron Wyden. Let's put him in one category. I think the White House, ever since the Republicans voted in the House to completely reject the stimulus bill and then clapped for themselves when they finished, had a sense that there wasn't going to be much compromise here. And I think they do realize a sort of a truism in American politics, right? It's like the old joke about outrunning a bear. You don't need to outrun the bear. You just need to outrun the other guy. And what they need to look like is more bipartisan than the other guy. And I think that's what they're attempting to achieve with the summit. You know, if they hear great ideas, fine, but, you know, it's not like John Boehner isn't coming up with a brand new policy next weekend. This stuff is a pretty well-known policy issue. You know, people have heard the arguments from experts. They've been scored by CBO, and people are trying to save money and cover the most people.
Ezra Klein of The Washington Post, really appreciate your reporting on this and you making time for us, particularly in the snow. Thanks, Ezra.
Thank you.